This is Corey Willis with PPEI, and you're listening to the Diesel Podcast.
I'm Adam Blattenberg from Diesel World.
Hi, this is Dan, owner of Dan's Diesel Performance.
I'm Christian Roth of BD Diesel.
I'm Braden Fleece, and you're listening to the Diesel Podcast.
What is going on, Diesel Nation? We're excited to have you guys with us today on the Diesel Podcast. This is going to be a Duramax episode. We're chatting with Wade Boyd. He's the owner of Diesel Daydreams out of North Glen, Colorado. And you've probably heard of him and seen his truck. He had it in UCC in the past, and he's been around diesel for a really long time. So he's seen a bunch of different trends come and go, and he even remembers the days of Duramax trucks not having a lot of aftermarket support and them basically being the new kids on the block. And so today we wanted to chat with him about how did he get into diesel trucks, and specifically his first Duramax, and then how that progressed through modifications, building a UCC truck, and then his shop where he does a lot of maintenance, repair, performance, tons of different things with his company Diesel Daydreams. And we just wanted to sit back, chat with him, and learn more about what he has going on at his shop and with the performance side. All right, let's get to the podcast with Wade and chatting about Duramax trucks. Wade, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. It's going to be great to chat with you today. This is our first time chatting on an episode. I've definitely heard of your company, seen your truck, and know the things that you've done in diesel. But this is our first time kind of formally sitting down on a podcast episode to go through Duramax stuff. So we're glad to have you with us today.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, brother, for having me. It's an honor to be on the show. Thank you.
I know a lot of the Duramax fans out there, they're going to recognize your truck and being out at UCC and just how long you've been in the diesel performance industry and things you've done with the Duramax platform. But for any of our newer listeners or people who just got into diesel, if you could tell us a bit about your background in it, your company, your truck, and just how you got really into the performance side, working on trucks, making them run faster, and the whole enthusiasm that joins all of us in the diesel community.
Yeah, my name is obviously Wade Boyd. I'm with Diesel Daydreams. We're out of North Glen, Colorado. And, I've been racing Duramaxes for a long time. It originally started out as, just getting a tow vehicle for my race car at the time that I was breaking them, down at Vandermeer. And I was having to call my buddies all the time to come down and get me and rescue me because, I was broken down, didn't have a trailer. And I figured, it's time to step up into something else on that aspect where I can recover myself, get my car back and forth to not only this track, but other place I wanted to go. And so I started looking at, different platforms that were out there. I've always, been a gearhead and worked on my own stuff. And my buddies were turning me into the Power Strokes and the Cummins at the time because they had all these cool aftermarket parts and, chips and tuners and a lot of stuff that I wasn't familiar with at the time. And, that part of the air, which was right around 01, 02. And so I went out and I test drove them. And, of course, the old 7.3s, they were real loud and they were fun to drive. And they had a lot of stuff, even at that point in time for them that, you could do to them. But my wife and I kind of made an early on agreement if I was going to get a truck, her knowing me that I wasn't going to, I had to make this agreement that I wasn't going to hop it up. I wasn't going to start messing with it. So the Duramax, when I went out there, not a whole lot of people had recommended the platform because GM had just, came out of the whole 6.2 and 6.5 era. And, you either loved them or you hated them, but they didn't even hold a candle to, the turbocharged Cummins and, the Power Strokes of the time. So it just wasn't even, it wasn't what people were looking for. And then the Duramax at the time was brand new. And so it was quiet. When I went out and drove it, I was just impressed with how quiet it was in comparison to the, 24 valve O2 Cummins and, the O2 7.3s at the time. It just was a really smooth, quiet truck. And the flip side of that was there was nothing out for it. So I was like, okay, I can't even mess with this if I want to. They don't even make anything for this thing. This is, perfect for me. So that's how I actually got into it was, once I owned it for a few months, that slippery slope started, coming at me. And, it wasn't anything real big initially. I think that's how we all kind of start off as, enthusiasts. Is we get something cool, we start tinkering with it, we do an intake, and, we start, geeking out a little bit online as with all the parts that are out there for what you can do. And, just realize the potential that was there and just was so untapped because nobody knew anything about the Duramax. It was, one of those new things that when you ask questions about it, nobody knew anything about it. They didn't know what to tell you. It was a completely new design. A lot of people, early in, when I first heard about them, they're like, oh, you're going to melt the heads right off that thing. It's got aluminum heads on it. And because that was a new thing, the 7.3s and the Cummins had iron heads. So here you had this new, developmental change, I guess you can say, as far as the engineering side of things. And nobody had seen that aluminum head on a diesel. And I said, oh, you're going to melt those things right off. And they're going to have all these problems. And, I drove it around for 4 or 5 months and just loved it. And I was down in Utah at the time, and there was an event that was going on. I'd seen it online. There was a forum that I was a part of at the time, and there was a bunch of guys that were getting together for it. And there was some, I thought that they were sales guys at the time. Turns out they were, the owners of Edge at the time. And so they were kind of, peddling their electronics and, were talking to me about, just what their product could do. And me being a gasoline guy, I'm thinking to myself, this guy's promising a lot of stuff. And, this is, you kind of hear the same thing in the gas stuff. Oh, yeah, put a chip on there, and this is what it's going to give you. Here's all, but you got to do all these other modifications to be able to make it happen. You got to change your thermostat. You got to, run higher octane. You got to have an intake and an exhaust. These guys said, look, you don't have to do anything. It's just plug and play. It'll take me 2 minutes to plug it into your truck, and you can just go and try it. I said, okay, well, what's 2 minutes, right? I mean, my wife won't even know that I'm gone for 2 minutes. So, we got to the parking lot, and they plugged this, the first generation Edge into my truck. And it was one of the ones where you actually had to plug it in, turn the key on, drop it down to drive, hit the gas pedal 5 times, put it back up into park, turn it back off. And people, when I first told them how you had to change the power level on the Edge of that, they thought I was joking. I was like, no, that's how you used to do it back in the day. And then you turn the key back on, fire the vehicle up, and then, if you went down to reverse neutral and then back up to park, it would hump the idle as to what level you were in. Nonetheless, these guys plugged this into my truck, and I go down the street. And the first time that I put the throttle down, that was the worst thing that happened to me, obviously, as far as stepping off of the slippery slope. But it turned out to be, one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life direction, because, it started me in a totally different path that I was really intrigued by, because being a gearhead and coming from the gasoline world and loving turbochargers and, just seeing the potential of, boost, I was so fascinated with that initially. And so, my first boosted car broke a lot of stuff. And, the diesel trucks were just different. None of my hot rod buddies could tell me anything about. I'm like, man, how do these diesels work? And it was just the whole way that, because, they didn't have distributors, they didn't have spark plugs, and then, early on thinking, well, is it by the glow plugs? How do they control ignition? And so once the wheels started turning, I started digging in deeper because of that first experience that I had with that full throttle down the road, and you see that, puff of smoke on, and next thing you know, you just see white smoke coming off the tires, and you're thinking, this would have cost me like $5,000 in the gasoline world to achieve this kind of power increase instantly. I mean, these guys put this on my truck in a few minutes, and I rolled out of the parking lot, and I had 150 more horsepower than my truck had. And at the time, that was, come to find out, pretty tame. I mean, we still had about another 50 horsepower on the table that we could have, still gotten out of that platform. So that was the start of the intrigue for me, and I just started becoming an enthusiast about it, reading everything I could about it and learning as much as I could. And as I started to progress things and, we started learning things on the forum, I started trying new things. And one of the first things that really just kind of set me apart, I think, from some of the rest of the time when I got into it was, the ability to tune the truck. Okay, I had an individual out of, California that he had done tuning on all sorts of other different platforms, had gotten into the diesel stuff, and had a downloader available that he, kind of tweaked for the diesel stuff, and I worked with him, as far as the parameters, what I wanted to do with the truck. And I remember him talking to me over the phone, and he goes, "Wait, you're going to do what?" And when I told him I was going to put nitrous on the truck, and I said, "Well, I really want some, fueling to be able to go with this. I need to overdo it. And right now with what we've got on the market between, the Edge and, some of these other stacks, quote unquote stacks that we used to do, to be able to, get the enhancements that we were looking for, which we really didn't know what we were doing. And that was the problem is, these tunes with the Edge, we would stack it with like a pressure box or, I guess a less PC term would be called the bastard stack, right? Everybody, knew about the quad Van Aken 215 stack with the Edge, and that was like the hot thing back in the day, right? Like, that was what you beat everybody with. Oh man, what are you stacking, in your truck? And so I dealt with Steve Cole, actually out of TTS, and it was the turbo shop. He dealt, with Lamborghinis and turbocharged Ferraris. And when I told him what I wanted to do, he said, "Yeah, I can build you something. I can't tell you what it's going to do initially, but we'll get some info back and forth." And worked with him, over probably a 2 or 3 week period. And, he sent me, this last tune, and I put it into the truck, and I was just blown away. I was like, "This is what we need." And so I told my friend Adam, who was helping me out with the nitrous setup on the truck, let's go out and try it. And I go out on the Highway 36 for the very first time. The truck's, in two-wheel drive, and I knew right at that point at 75 miles an hour, I could stomp it. It wouldn't downshift, into fourth, and it'd get that good load on the fuel before the turbo would come up. And, I could hit the nitrous and see what it would do. And that was the last time I ever did that because, pointing the truck sideways, in two different directions and almost mopping people off the highway probably wasn't a smart idea back in the day. But it was just one of those things I was blown away. I didn't realize how much power we had just made until we took it to the track. And the fastest truck in the country at that point in time, to my knowledge, there was two guys that we were all kind of, hunting on the forums, and there was Mike Tomac and Buck Spruill, and super fast guys. I mean, guys that were pushing the limits of things that really, helped, I think, our generation of Duramax guys just push things to the next level. I mean, there was obviously a lot of guys, but those were some of the forefront guys that I knew of in the country that we were all kind of battling it out for, for times early on. And Tomac had gone, like a 12.24 in Indy, and then Buck, he was right there, if not, already at the top of the 11s from what I knew. And here we come out with, this pet-bob, pinstripe, four-door, all-trained, truck with stock exhaust and a stock intake with this custom tune, a homemade lift pump, and a big shot of nitrous with a, stock turbo. And we went out to the track and knocked off an 1178. And it was just like, and actually, let me back that up. I take that back. It went 1232, the very first hit out on the nitrous, and it was up against the Corvette Connection, one of their cars, and it was just a dumbfounding moment for me because I'd never raced a sports car up until that point, and the truck at Vandermeer had only ever gone a 1480, with the stacked programming and chips that we had before. So, here we go with this new program, from TTS and this big shot of nitrous, and we go, flying down the track, run a 1232, which blew me away that we were even, in the 12s. We were thinking, okay, high, maybe mid-13s. We'll see where I can dial it. And it goes 1232 right out of the gate. And then we put propane to it because, we didn't have any other ways of getting fuel. So it's like once we cleaned it all up and we just didn't have anything left, in the tuning side of things, we put a PowerShot 2000 propane system on it. And the first time we took it to the track the next weekend, and that's when we went 1178. And it just, that to me was not only a lot of fun, but it kind of broke open just the possibilities for me of what these trucks were capable of, because I took a bone stock looking truck. It still had the factory exhaust with the muffler removed on it. And here we are with a stock intake. And when I popped the hood, people were blown away. They were like, wait, what? like, how is this truck going this fast? Like, it's got nothing done to it. Right. It's got fuel, it's got air, it's got tuning. Like, we're at high elevations, which gave me this massive advantage over people that were at lower elevation. And for the longest time, I just kind of cracked back and smiled, because when I decided I was going to go the nitrous direction, a bunch of people thought I was nuts because, oh, you're going to blow your truck up, but, you know, you can't control it. And when I was looking at it, it just didn't make sense because it was an oxidizer, and if we had black smoke, we just didn't have enough air. So my philosophy is, you know, we'll bump the timing back on it so we don't, you know, advance things too fast. But if we bump the timing back, we keep our fuel pressure up, and we can clean up that black smoke, we'll just run, you know, that amount of nitrous to it. But then when you coupled it with the, you know, catalyzing effects of the propane, it just made for a really, really hot cocktail. But I also learned that that's how you flour the pistons in your lower end. So, you know, uncontrolled burn fuel, you know, it wasn't always a good thing. But, you know, got us fast, and, you know, it opened up a lot of people's eyes, I think, not only my own, but when we went down to the track, I was running, you know, some products from ATS, and I was running a sticker, and Clint, I actually ran against him in the Boogie Max, and I thought that's one of the times I thought I was going to get my shorts knocked off, because he had his hood up, and he had, you know, this big new, you know, prototype turbo underneath the hood, and everybody is, you know, up underneath, and I'm thinking, this guy's about to wax me down the quarter mile, and lined up against him, and, you know, that was also the start of a, you know, relationship with us, you know, that kind of propelled things for me, because up until that point, I was just an enthusiast. I wasn't actually in, you know, a professional level of, you know, wrenching or, you know, engineering at that point in time, and I was just doing it for fun. And so when I got up against Clint, and we raced each other, he, you know, he sees that I was running his stuff, and after I beat him in the quarter mile, he comes back to me in the pits, and he was just like, we got in this thing. And he says, you know, I see that you're running our sticker. And when I popped the hood, and he saw that stock intake, and he saw the stock turbo, and it looked like it just came off the factory floor, but it had a nitrous solenoid sitting up on the firewall. He goes, oh, you're spraying it, and that's it? Yeah, it was a pretty simple setup, but it was super effective, you know. And but, you know, there was a lot of things that we did to get to that point, at, you know, with the truck, and, you know, the center link, and, you know, some of the tie rod sleeves and stuff to kind of make drag racing a viable thing without folding the front end up. But it was a fun time, I think, in the Duramax world. It was just new. Nobody knew anything about it. Everybody was trying new stuff, and, you know, some things were working, other things weren't working, and, you know, some people were able to take advantage of that, like myself, and, you know, just had a cocktail and a combination of things that worked really, really well at the time. And, you know, we just took and ran with it. And shoot, I think within the next couple of years, you know, started going to sled pools, a lot more drag races, a lot more local events, and just really opening the eyes of everybody else of what these trucks were capable of. Because when you really hopped up a Cummins or, you know, a Power Stroke, it made it a lot more difficult in some aspects with the earlier generations to drive on the street, because they didn't have, you know, the tunability and a broad range of scenarios as to where the Duramax, when it came out, you know, it was, you know, a much easier platform to get to do a lot of stuff. And when we had the switchability to be able to change the horsepower levels on the fly, it just opened the whole world up for not only can I, you know, daily drive my truck and get great fuel mileage, I can use it. I can go up camping, throw my quad in the back, all my camping gear, my family, pack this thing down to the hill, drive up to the hills, and it drives just like it does stock or better. And that to me was just something you never got in the gas world. It always seemed like there was this huge trade-off to where if you went one direction, that's the direction you went, and you really couldn't use it for both, you know, worlds. If you raced it out, or you increased the horsepower, you put a turbo on something, you certainly couldn't tow with it, or it made it really difficult. You had to put a lot of other things, you know, in place to be able to make it happen. And then here, I got this new platform that I'm playing with where, you know, I can put very little into it, I thought, in comparison, for the gains that you would, you know, get. And it was just a really reliable platform at that power level. And so we've pushed the limits, obviously, until, you know, we found the breaking points. But yeah, that was really the start of the passion, part of it is, and getting the drag racing out there and being able to do everything. And I know it woke a lot of people up, in the drag racing world locally here and Vandermeer, they loved it. And so, but that was a spark for me when I got to see a diesel go down the, drag strip and it was fast. That was an amazing thing to me because you just didn't see stuff like that, and they were kind of like a choo-choo train. And the first truck, I remember that just knocked my socks off when I watched it go down the quarter mile at Vandermeer, and it was at a testing tune right before, I believe, Truck Fest, and he was testing his truck out. It was Richard Mad Dog Madsen and his big old huge Fummins, 4-door long bed, lifted truck, and it was just a land yacht. The thing was massive. And he went down, and I remember the first time I heard that truck spool up, and I'm thinking to myself, like, oh, man, this hot rod's going to, mess this truck up. And that truck took off, and my jaw hit the ground. I was just floored of watching this guy skate this, land yacht from lane to wall to lane, and then he knocks off like a 1099, and I'm thinking, what just happened? Is this real life? Like, that was a diesel truck that just did that. And that's when, the performance interest in the diesel stuff really also kind of, was rooted with me years before, I ever even got my own, truck. And it was just a neat thing to see something that you'd never seen before at the track go so fast, because we were hot rodders. We, had cars that we thought were fast. And then, you're thinking to yourself, man, I've got a turbocharged all-drive car that, I've got everything I've ever earned in my life into this thing. And this diesel truck would mop me up, all the way down the, the drag strip or on the street. Like, God forbid you lined up against that thing and you thought you were going to put one over on some old guy in an old Fummins, and holy smokes, it was just a neat thing to see. And that's what intrigued me about the diesel, industry and the performance side of things. And I think that passionate drive instilled in me was just something that was so different. And even when you go to the drag strip, and I was fast, I was, beating people in the quarter mile, or I was bracket racing guys. It was really cool to get back to the pits and then have people come up to you and say, dude, I just watched your truck run. That was amazing. I can't believe how fast it was. I tow my race car with the same exact truck. Like, and your truck would beat my race car, And you would see that excitement in them. And you're like, yeah, that's what it's about. That's what excited me. When I got to see something incredible, when I got to see something big and heavy, move like it shouldn't have moved, and you were just blown away by it. That was the cool factor of being able to have something high performance in the diesel world in the early, I think the early onsets of it, which was from like 2002 to 2005, was really, I think, when things started to propel, and the technology started coming out, and different platforms started coming out, and ever since then it's been, once the EFILIVE came out for the Duramaxes, that opened up a lot of avenues for a lot of things, because there was so much, that we had to do to, make the performance parts that we were putting on the trucks work at the time. I remember we were trying to make the Aurora 5000, kit back at ATS, a streetable, packaged, here we go, like, mail it out type of thing. And we were going back and forth to Radio Shack, getting transistors, trying to make, boost foolers to where, we wouldn't be throwing boost codes. We'd get things back in line with resistors, and that's how we made the trucks run. And that's how we made, the power happen within, other parameters. And then, we get a EFILIVE, and now we can set those parameters. Now we don't have to, run down to Radio Shack and get resistors and solder things in and build and engineer, these simple things. Now we can do that with a couple of keystrokes and get everything back in line with where, with where they need to be. And that's when I think, we went from, a good performance, increase at that point to just, it opened the doors wide open for, the Duramax at that point. And, I know that's when I started going super fast. I knocked off quite a bit of time, once we can, get behind the keyboard and some data. And that was the other thing too, is being able to data log. We had an incredible tool, with EFILIVE when it was released to us. And, I remember the first initial beta version, being on that beta team and, just listening to some of the problems and trying to figure some of the issues out with, just some of the load processes. And I can't even tell you how many ECMs I nuked, just trying to figure out, whoops, we did that in the wrong order, or have this hooked up while you do that. So, there was a learning curve to it, but to be on the forefront of that performance wave, it opened up a lot of doors to, enhance products that were already out there, and open the doors for newer products. I think that's when a lot of companies, started offering a lot of stuff for the Duramaxes, because there was, a way to make a run with it, and we just didn't have that availability for that. So it was, it's been a cool ride, to be a part of the Duramax performance industry and to watch it, go from its infancy to where it's at even today, and to watch the companies that have, pushed the technology envelopes and have poured their passions into it, as well as we have, because there's a lot of companies out there, DDPM, Suncoast. I mean, I had to give a lot of credit to, everybody that backs us, fast, not just on our ride, but I think as an industry in the whole, these companies, pour out a lot into us. Exergy, it's, they have a lot of money invested in us, right? And as racers, and so to have companies that continue to grow and have a passion for the industry and the sport like we do, is awesome. And it's we didn't always have that, and so it's good to have companies that are still around that have that at the forefront of their minds and to be like-minded. So they make it a lot of fun. And I know there's a lot of things we're excited about to get out there and try that have been sitting on our shelf for far too long. So we can't wait for the 2020 season to open up here pretty quick, because we think we'll have some neat stuff to go out there and try. Unfortunately, we won't be at UCC, this year. But I don't know. Maybe talk to James if things change, because things got pushed back a little bit. So if we get things put together and we get some test time, before the country gets back on its feet, then maybe we can make something happen. But nonetheless, we're just excited to get out there and try some of the new things that these companies have offered us. Jeremy Wagler has just been awesome to work with, and he offered us up a new set of cylinder heads that really addressed all the issues that we were having, and it was an awesome opportunity for us to get on board with that. But the billet cylinder heads that we're getting ready to run now are hopefully going to take us to that next progression of reliability and ability to make some serious power with the Duramax platform. And then, of course, with our drivetrain upgrades that we got from Suncoast this last year, and the technology that came out for it, from Matt Sanger, that was a step for us. So we're excited to get out there and try that stuff too. So I'm kind of dancing around a little bit, but there's just a lot going on and a lot of cool things that are up and coming, and yeah, we're excited about it for sure.
I think the way that the passion and excitement hits back then is the same way it does now, and it was for me it's very similar. It was I had gas trucks or even LS cars and different things, and I knew what they could do, but I would look at the cost of it versus what I could get out of it, and it always starts with like that one friend or that one person you see or whatever. For me, it was very similar. I was at I think it was 2010 at Truck Fest, and I remember seeing Dimitri's red 4-door Duramax, and it raced. I don't know who owned it at the time or if they still do, but it was a second. Yeah, it was that truck. And I remember sitting in the stands not knowing anything, but I remember the sound and watching, and it was just like I got hooked right then, just watching that race. And I think they were in the 10 somewhere, but just seeing that and hearing it. And then the next thing, it's like, I need a Smarty. And then you do that, and then and then it's the TNT files. And I remember for the longest time it was looking, at it as someone who didn't have a Duramax, is like, oh, EFILIVE, I don't need EFILIVE. What's the big deal with it? And then once it came out for the 5.9 and the 6.7, and the first time I drove my truck with a file in it, I was like, I see why those guys love it so much. And it wasn't necessarily the racing part or like full throttle part. I mean, that was great, but it was the drivability, and it's just how that ties everything together. And I think, with that excitement, right, that you had and the passion, then meeting these different people, the different companies, and going to these events, it's like, can I surround myself with this all the time? Can I do this as a career? Can I do this as a business? How cool would that be? And, when I think of Diesel Daydreams, that's what I think of. I know in Colorado and this region, you guys are very, very well known. And, with the racing that you guys have done, and especially going to UCC, and it's like this, huge national stages, is what you guys do has grown. And a lot of the topics that we have on the podcast, we're chatting about things in the Midwest or in the South or on the East Coast, but there's so many diesels in the Rocky Mountain region, from New Mexico and Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana. There's a lot of people that are really into them. And I wanted to ask you, because you've got vastly more experience and event experience than I have, is what are some of the opportunities that people have in the Rocky Mountain region if they want to race, if they want to go check out shows, do different things and get their truck out there?
Sure. Yeah, no, it's there's quite a bit. And you kind of have to, when you're in the diesel world, you kind of have to inject yourself, I think, into some other areas that you can kind of fit in the racing world as well. So, you have to be flexible, and that's where, making sure that your platform, which most 98.9% of people that have a truck with, even a moderate to, mid-level performance are going to fit within, going to like the KPPI, grudge racing. That's a blast because, you get to go out there, rub elbows with guys, but you get to race your buddies. It's a little bit cooler platform because you're out there to do some grudge racing, and most guys with, or some, I should say, with, the diesel trucks, don't come from, drag racing background, or they haven't drag raced the truck. So, when you go to, like, say, a gas event, it makes it kind of difficult to, stage in with those guys if they know what they're doing. But, the grudge racing is, real open for them. You get to race your buddies. You don't have to worry about some guy burning you down or something in the lane next to you, but it's a lot of fun. But as far as the diesel events, man, Truck Fest has always kind of been it, here in Colorado at least. That, the hunting for horsepower, and then, the Gauntlet Challenge, just to name a few. So, some of the local events that the guys put on, I mean, we love. It doesn't matter if, there are other, shops. PRT usually has a really cool dyno day that they'll put on every year, for the guys to get together and just, watch the social media for that type of stuff. But, yeah, Truck Fest was, I thought, for the longest time, even nationwide, was one of the largest events, to be able to go to, even with some of the Midwest ones that I'd gone to back in my tenure when I was traveling, going to all the different shows. There was a big, huge following out there, and there's no doubt. But, man, the Truck Fest stuff really seemed like it pulled people together here. We've seen less of a following in the drag racing side ever since the NHRDA, obviously, they're not around anymore. So we don't have guidelines and, like a sanctioned bodied event on this end of town. And so, fortunately, there's some drag racers along with myself that have been, discussing back and forth about putting something on, very specifically about here, whether it be a race series, or even if it, is just a couple of big events that were tailored more towards the diesel specifically. Because right now we don't have a lot that, is really just tailored around us. So that's why I said, kind of got to find where you can fill in and go to some of, bracket races here and there. But, the club clashes at Vandermeer's got a lot of really cool events throughout the year. That even as diesel guys, you could be a part of. You get, 5 or 6 or even a couple of your buddies together to go out to, to the club clashes on Friday nights. And that's how I used to, drag race. And that's honestly how a lot of people knew me in the drag racing world. It was because I was out there, doing these gasoline events. I was doing, the club clashes, the Quaker State ET Street Series. We'd go run tough and stuff like that, and just put ourselves, in with those guys, and really just to kind of, not only just rub elbows, but to be a respectful addition to it, right? To say, hey, look, we want to be a part of this, we can be, consistent. We can be respectful. We don't have to, we're not just outlaws or, butt heads, but we've made a lot of friends, with people at the track in Vandermeer, being the local track here is, the big source and hub. The next one that I love to go to was up in Utah, and I'm not positive how it's going to happen with R&R. I know they've been shut down for a little bit, but the Weekend on the Edge and, some of the industrial injection events were always fun to go to as well because, they're well organized and get a bunch of guys together. So, but here in Colorado, I mean, for the local scene guys, definitely, hit up Truck Fest, and if you're into drag racing and you want to go, drag race, there's for sure venues for that. Or if you're more into, the show side of things, the, KPPEI car show and the grudge racing is always a good one to go to because, like I said, it's a lot more open form. You can get in the lanes when you want to, so you can kind of set up your drag races, on the side with, your buddy that may have been running his mouth a little bit too much, and he thinks he's got a faster Ford than your Cummins or something. So those are always fun to go out there, and it's a much easier platform for those guys to do that. And what I found is that kind of fits a lot of the diesel guys pretty well too, because they're, like I said, they're not hardcore drag racers. Outside of Truck Fest, you wouldn't see a whole mass amount of diesel trucks typically in one place, not around here anyway. So, but yeah, those are definitely my favorite events here. And, the dyno events, those are always a blast. So you get a bunch of guys together and see what kind of horsepower you can push out. And trucks that are making 100+ pounds of boost are, intimidating, when you get them strapped down to something, turning some loaded rollers. So,
yeah, I think we're all ready for things to start, opening back up and, tracks to be open and all these projects that guys were working on over the winter. They're ready to race. It's going to be really exciting and refreshing to see all that. And, one of the things that I know a lot of our listeners, when we do an episode, because, it's a podcast, we don't have a video, rolling of your truck or some of your races, but on your social media, you guys have a lot of that. You have a lot of pictures, and not just about your truck, but also things you guys are working on. What's the best way for listeners to be able to go follow you, check out what you guys are working on, see builds that you have in the shop or things you're working on with your personal truck?
Yeah, definitely. Hitting us up on the social media platform on Facebook is the best for us. Unfortunately, I'm of that era. I think just before all the Instagram and Twitter, folks. But I had an Instagram at one point in time, but that I can't keep up with everything. So Facebook is by far the best platform to get us on. Check out what we're doing. We post up, the engine builds and a lot of the fun stuff. Of course, we do 98.9%, service and head gaskets and turbos and, just keeping people on the road. But we like to keep, the interest and the passion out there. And so we like to post a lot of the fun stuff that we do and, the cool projects that we got coming up and, the fun, sexy stuff that everybody likes to put their eyes on, as well as us. I mean, we're enthusiasts and we're passionate about it too. So, walk by a toolbox as we're building something and, catches our eyes and we like to share it with folks. So that's by far the best place to get us.
Awesome, Wade. Well, I had a great time chatting with you, and I really hope to be able to check you out racing at Vandermeer, this summer and see the truck, make some passes and everything. But I appreciate your time today and talking with us and sharing that passion. What got you hooked on it and the whole, going down the track and going fast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man. It was definitely a pleasure and an honor. And we look forward to seeing you out there and listening to your podcast in the future.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, if there's any shops, racers, personalities that you want on the Diesel podcast, make sure and let us know. You can tag them on any of our posts on Instagram or Facebook. We had a post recently, and there was a ton of recommendations for different shop owners or different performance enthusiast racers, personalities, whether they had Cummins, Duramax, or Power Stroke trucks. We had a ton of great recommendations from there. We love hearing from you guys. We want to know if there's any particular topics you'd like us to cover, any issues that, maybe you're fighting on your truck you'd like us to get an expert on, ask them some questions. So make sure and shoot us a message, tag us on social media, and we'll make sure and get them on. Till next time, keep the shiny side up. The shiny side up. The shiny side up.